My mom, she moved from right outside Manila in the Philippines when she was 5 years old, and my dad's literally been here forever, like his whole side of the family, specifically in Jacksonville for a long, long time.
My family's migration story is my grandmother, Ligaya Skinner, is from Baguio City, Philippines. She moved to America after she was living in Spain, where she married my grandfather, Bob Skinner.
My father, after he went to college, went to work for Microsoft in Seattle. He worked there for about 8 years while my mother practiced being an eye doctor there. We ended up moving to Jacksonville for my mother's job here at Johnson & Johnson, and my dad is now working as the CEO of PAX US here in Jacksonville as well.
Around the early 60s, my great-grandparents moved down here because there were better job opportunities versus being in Georgia where they were field workers.
My great-grandfather came from Cuba. They migrated over here actually kind of like the week before the Bay of Pigs happened. So they were living there, and he had the baseball team, the Sugar Kings, in Cuba. And when he was coming over to Florida, he brought the baseball team with him, and that became the Jacksonville Suns.
From Africa, we migrated to the United States of America, and from then it just became about struggling to fit ourselves into the universal American dream and just trying to mold ourselves into something that we thought was representative of Americans.
My migration stories is that my lolo, which is what you call a grandfather in Tagalog, he came from the Philippines to Mississippi, and then my lola, which is my grandmother, brought all of my dad and his siblings to Mississippi, and they kind of grew up from there. And then my great-great-grandmother came from Ireland and moved to New Jersey, which is where she raised my grandparents, and we had a life there.
Daisy Goodwin gave birth to her daughter, Eileen Goodwin, and they moved to Jacksonville with her brother Edward to have better opportunities. Once Eileen grew up, she eventually married a man named Harriet Talbert, whose mother was Susie E. Talbert. And Susie E. Talbert is my great-great-grandmother, and she was a philanthropist in Jacksonville, and she notoriously fed students at Edward Waters College during the Great Depression. Her granddaughter, which is my grandmother, Rosemary Talbert Hickson, she was heavily involved with sit-in demonstrations in the 1960s. And her father-in-law, his name was Edward Hickson Sr., was one of the first black cops in Jacksonville.